There was some conversation about the idea that maybe Georgia would end up being a swing state. Maybe Georgia would be the kind of place that was actually competitive. And then you took a look at the battlegrounds over the last month and you said there's no competition here, with Trump now up 2.5. Is Georgia actually a bellwether for some of these other battleground states? Tony Katz Today. Good to be with you. Doug Collins joins us right now, former congressman from Georgia. He is the chair of the America First Policy Institute for Georgia. You can just call him Doug. He prefers it. It's good to be with you. Good to have you on the show. We are a long way from 2022 and a long way from, of course, what we saw in that special election. Even though it's only 2 years, let's talk about what has taken place since then, since Raphael Warnock was able to get into the Senate and Ossoff. What has happened in Georgia, as you have seen it, that has maybe been more beneficial to President Trump and Republicans as a whole?
Well, it's good to be with you. I think a couple of things. And to understand Georgia, it's about like trying to understand most anything. You have to know the mosaic. You have to know what happened. And Georgia inherently, and I know this may sound strange to some, it inherently hadn't changed. What has changed is we had an event in 2020 that we had a double Senate seat going on. I was a part of that, so I mean, full disclosure. And we didn't have a primary, which made us have a general election running into a primary running into a general. And then David Perdue was against Ossoff at the time. And then it went into a runoff. The runoff was then on the backdrop of all the problems of 2020's presidential race. So we ended up losing those seats. We had a lot of Republicans. We had almost a 15 to 20% drop in Republican turnout in that runoff. Lost the 2 seats. 2022 shows up. Georgia gets back to what I call normal, except for the Senate seat. And frankly, Herschel Walker, a great guy, I've known him for a long time, just didn't have the campaign, didn't have the background. That was just not a good fit for this race, and Warnock won. But everybody else on that campaign ballot on 2022, from the governor on down, won by historical margins. So what we've seen is a legislature then in 2021 also put in some safeguards for our elections, such as you now have to have a ID to get an absentee ballot. You can't just, get one on signature. So these are kind of things that have, tightened up the elections, look at what we're doing. And I think really now more people are focused on it. So I feel good about what's going to happen in 2 weeks from today. And Georgia, I think, has come back to where Georgia has been historically, say, the last 20, 25 years.
These changes in how you guys run elections, this was the stuff that Stacey Abrams and the progressive left were saying was the voter suppression. This was voter suppression, and very specifically, you, Doug Collins, to a person, never mind the entire Republican Party, are trying to keep black people from voting in Georgia.
Yep.
We've seen that is not certainly the way it's worked out. What can you tell us about how votes have gone and how participation has taken place?
Well, first off, let me just talk about this voter suppression issue. Since we actually implemented voter ID, which we did over a decade plus ago, and offered IDs, and everybody said that our Hispanic turnout, African American turnout, elderly turnout would all be down. Guess what? In the last 10 years, on every cycle, those have had some of the highest participation rates, period. So they basically just lied. And they're continuing to lie. They can't even accept currently that we've had the highest early voter turnout we've ever had, spanning all demographics, all ages, and the Democrats they just can't comprehend it because their lie is based on a lie that people, frankly, are too, I just hate to say it, the Democrats believe that people are too dumb to understand that they needed an ID and to do basic things to go and vote. And people are offended by it, but they actually still get out and vote. So, the numbers in Georgia are really good. The numbers in Georgia for Harris are not good. Her African-American support is not there. She's got 8 to 10% on a poll just released today, 44% lead for Trump in an AJC poll, and a journal poll. And her support is soft, and it's getting worse. So I think one last thing is that we've had a lot of what I call low propensity voters, those voters who only vote occasionally. Well, they're showing up in a higher percentage here, so we're not pulling people off of election day voting. We're getting people who've not been voting, and the year we last saw that happening a whole lot, 2016.
talking to Doug Collins, former congressman from Georgia. He chairs the America First Policy Institute for the state of Georgia. How Georgia plays as a battleground versus what it might mean, or I should say in conjunction with what it might mean as a bellwether for others. You take a look at the battleground states. You have, starting with Pennsylvania, which everyone argues is the most important state, you have Trump up 0.8. This is, as of today, as we're talking, in the Real Clear Politics average. North Carolina, Trump up 0.5. Georgia, as we said, Trump up 2.5. Arizona, Trump up 1.8. Wisconsin, Trump up 0.4. Michigan, Trump up 1.2. And Nevada, which I still find amazing, Trump up a 0.7. It's a state that I still don't have in my 270 to win map. I don't have in Trump's category, in Trump's camp. I still think that that's going to go with the Democrats. I have no faith that the Culinary Union isn't going to work hard to make that happen. But what we're seeing in Georgia, have there been things happening in Georgia, campaigning happening in Georgia, a message that has resonated with the people of Georgia that you think has been the message that has been helpful in these other places, connection between Georgia and some of these Sunbelt and Rust Belt states?
I think so, and I think it's two things. And it's the two things that the Harris campaign has run from the most because it's the two things they can't explain. Okay, nobody buys it. In this election, it's inflation, economy, and immigration crime. They don't have an answer for either one. They can't answer the economy and the inflation because they caused it. They've run from it. They've tried Bidenomics. They've tried everything else, and they can't run from it. In Georgia, that's made a big difference in people's pocketbooks, people's ability to earn a living. So that's number one. We're seeing that in Pennsylvania. I've been to other states as well. People are concerned, and it's perception. And so what they see actually coming out of their back pocket. Number two, immigration and safety. And it couldn't be any more explicit here in Georgia, where we had Laken Riley, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant, which put it on the front page. We've also seen it in our industries. We've seen the fentanyl issue here in Georgia. I think that's what you're seeing in a lot of states that are just not maybe as prevalent as what we're seeing here in Georgia as far as those issues resonating. Democrats put all their eggs in two baskets, basically. Quote, this democracy, which they can't define, the attack on democracy, and number two is abortion. And abortion in the latest poll in Georgia came in fifth or sixth at 8% of people's concerns about the country. Democrats just are not speaking to average Americans.
But there's no doubt. I mean, we'll talk about abortion just for a moment. You see, for example, Harry Enton at CNN discussing the fact that college-educated and non-college educated white women are moving towards Harris. And you haven't seen the Democrats drop back an ounce from the abortion conversation. It is still front and center. You had Liz Cheney, the former congresswoman from Wyoming, just yesterday saying that Republicans went too far with the Dobbs decision. They are quadrupled down on this, believing that it is indeed a mover. Your argument is the battleground states say no. Why move with a loser if it shows to be a loser?
Well, I think what you're seeing here is a new coalition of Republicans in this voting turnout that Trump has caused that is going back to what I would say is an old 1980 model of Ronald Reagan. You have conservative Democrats, what's left of them, and you do have them in Georgia. You do have them in Pennsylvania. You do have these that are grown up in that sort of union mindset, or maybe a mindset in which that had always been where they would go. And they're coming together to support Donald Trump. But in this abortion issue, yes, there is polling and a lot of data that shows that, you have the suburban female vote moving away maybe on that issue as something that they take really seriously. But younger people are just not really coming out about it. It's not a rallying cry. And the other, part of the abortion issue is you're now having, traditional families and African-American males, African-American females, but African-American males in particular who don't resonate to that message. It's just not one that they've resonated to in their community. And Asians and Hispanic voters, especially Hispanic voters, are not resonating to the abortion message either. It's a heavily Catholic population. And frankly, Harris has done everything she can to offend the Catholic population and people of faith.
Before I let you go, talking to Doug Collins, former congressman from Georgia, chair of the America First Policy Institute in Georgia. 2 weeks left. You have been through quite a few elections yourself. Is there a message that Trump is not hitting that you feel that he should, that would help him maybe in the battleground states that I have just mentioned?
the most effective ads that we've seen across the country, and especially in Georgia, which I think will be effective, number one, is keep running basically her own words that at her about the economy, where she talks about Biden. And then also one of the most effective ads is the they-them ad. If you've not seen it, it's the transgender ad. Mm-hmm. It really puts a stark contrast on how out of touch Harris is with the rest of the country. And I think those have been very effective. Those are the sort of closing messages that I could see.
Yeah, on the transgender issue, I have so many people who push back and say, "Oh, you're just engaging in a culture war." And my answer is yes, a very important culture war that needs to be won. Protecting children is pretty dang important. Your argument is Americans connect with that.
Yeah, they do. I think they do, because they don't. I mean, most Americans, except in the wildly liberal, circles, don't understand males playing in female sports, and they don't understand males going in female bathrooms. They don't understand that the very biological fact that there is a male and there is a female. And again, it is a culture war, but it affects. It's like crime, Tony. If you don't feel safe, if it doesn't feel right, you are going to be, you're going to act out against it. And that's just an issue that people don't, feel. It's a, quote, smaller issue, but the left, the far radical left, has made it an issue. And Harris has just, doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on it. When you're giving away transgender surgeries to people in jail, that was a tipping point, even for Charlemagne the God and on his radio and everything. He couldn't even believe that.
Doug Collins, you can find him at AmericaFirstPolicy.com, former congressman from Georgia. I appreciate you taking the time to be with us. More is coming up. I'm Tony Katz.